This helps keep your airway open. If the mouthpiece comes out of your mouth, the regulator's second stage will automatically fill with water. The quickest and easiest way to remove water from the second stage is the blast clear. You put the regulator mouthpiece in your mouth and exhale the air remaining in your lungs out of your mouth. If you do not have enough air in your lungs to perform the blast clear, you can use the purge clear. Put the tongue up to the roof of your mouth and against your teeth to prevent water from the second stage from going into your mouth and throat. Lightly press the purge button located on the front or side of the second stage. There are two ways to recover your regulator, the sweep method and the reach method. To use the sweep method, get into the vertical position, then lean to the right. Bring your right elbow to your side. Touch your right hand to your thigh, and then move it back to touch your cylinder. Sweep your right arm out from your cylinder in a big circle around to the front of your body. Your regulator should be in the bend of your right arm. Put the primary regulator in your mouth and either blast or purge clear the second stage. To find your regulator using the reach method, reach over your right shoulder with your right hand and grasp the first stage of your regulator. It might be necessary to lift your cylinder by its boot from the bottom with your left hand. Feel for the regulator hose on the first stage. Follow the hose down to the end. Your primary regulator will be at the end of the hose. Put your regulator in your mouth and either blast or purge clear the second stage. If you cannot immediately locate your primary second stage, you can always use your own backup regulator or redundant scuba system for breathing until you find your primary second stage. When a regulator begins delivering air continuously, it is free-flowing. To stop the free flow, turn the regulator so the mouthpiece opening is down. You should not dive with a free-flowing regulator. If a regulator starts to free flow during your dive, you can continue to breathe from the regulator by holding the mouthpiece with your hand loosely in your mouth. Breathe the air you need from the stream of air escaping from the mouthpiece. Perform a safe ascent. It's a good idea to turn off or have your buddy turn off your cylinder when you reach the surface, so you don't drain the air from your cylinder. If your BC's power inflator fails, you must orally inflate your BC during your dive to maintain proper buoyancy. To orally inflate your BC, inhale a breath of air, remove your regulator mouthpiece, put the BC's oral inflator mouthpiece in your mouth, press the deflator oral inflator valve button as you blow into the mouthpiece. When you surface, you will usually take your regulator out of your mouth and switch to snorkel. You must monitor your air consumption during your dive by frequently checking your submersible pressure gauge. At a minimum, you should check your SPG every 5 minutes when you are in shallow water, less than 9 meters or 30 feet, and more frequently when you are in deeper water. You must also check your SPG more frequently when cylinder pressure drops below 70 bar or 1000 psi. When you first begin diving, when you are cold, diving deep, or breathing rapidly, you will tend to consume more air. Therefore, you must monitor your air supply more frequently. On dives to 18 meters or 60 feet or less, begin your ascent when your cylinder reaches a minimum pressure of 50 bar or 800 psi or more. On deeper dives, begin your ascent when your cylinder pressure reaches a minimum pressure of 70 bar or 1000 psi or more, depending on the conditions. If there is one skill that determines a person's diving ability, it's buoyancy control. The 4 major ways that you affect your buoyancy are the type of protective suit you wear, the amount of weight you wear, the amount of air in your BC or dry suit, and the amount of air in your lungs. If you are properly weighted, you should be able to hover at 4 meters or 15 feet with 34 bar or 500 psi or less of air in your cylinder. You must test your buoyancy at the surface before you begin your dive. Make sure your BC is completely deflated. Assume an upright position in the water. Take a deep breath and hold it while you hang in the water motionless. Your buoyancy will change during your dive because of the compression of your diving suit, the amount of air in your BC, the items you collect during your dive, and the use of air in your cylinder. You will control your buoyancy during your dive by adding to or removing air from your BC or dry suit. Being able to descend easily in the water is one of the most important skills of diving. Diving is not much fun if you have to struggle to get to the bottom. Note the exact time that you leave the surface. Deflate your BC. You will slowly sink when all of the air is removed from your BC and you exhale. Remember to hold the power inflator hose over your head and watch its mouthpiece to see the air coming out as you go underwater. Stop pressing the valve button when you do not see any more air to prevent large amounts of water from entering the BC. Equalize your ears as soon as you start your descent and continually throughout your descent. Never continue descending if you feel pressure in your ears and you cannot equalize them. You will not feel discomfort if you are equalizing properly. Exhale and begin your feet-first descent. Remember to breathe out completely and then take a small breath of air. The less air you have in your lungs during the first few feet of descent, the easier your descent will be. If you descend feet first, you can maintain better contact with your buddy, and it will be easier to equalize pressure in your ear, mask, and sinuses. Stay with your buddy as you descend. Remain close enough to touch each other and maintain eye contact throughout the descent. If one is having trouble equalizing, the other must be patient and wait with them until the problem is corrected. Your rate of descent should not be rapid. The recommended rate of descent is no faster than 23 meters or 75 feet per minute. When you are wearing a wetsuit and make a descent in open water, you will lose buoyancy as the pressure of the water compresses your wetsuit. You will need to add small amounts of air to your BC to compensate for the compression of the wetsuit. You must never sink out of control. You should be able to stop your descent at any time just by inhaling a full breath of air. If you take a deep breath of air and continue to descend, you are too heavy and you need to add air to your BC to help slow you down. As your wetsuit compresses, it can loosen your weight belt. Remember to check your belt as you descend and then check it again as you reach bottom. Tighten the weight belt if necessary. Use your fins as little as possible during your descent. You should control your descent by your buoyancy, not by kicking. As you get close to the bottom, kicking can ruin visibility and harm the environment. Because so many things are happening at once during a descent, your first one will be a controlled descent. This means you descend on a line or along the contour of the bottom. Doing a controlled descent will allow you to concentrate on equalizing pressure, maintaining buddy contact, and controlling your buoyancy. Once you're comfortable with controlled descents, your instructor will introduce you to free descents. Free descents are vertical descents in open water without a line. During your dive, your goal is to maintain neutral buoyancy. Neutral buoyancy is a state in which you neither sink nor float when at rest. As you go deeper in the water, you will add small amounts of air to your BC or wetsuit compression or to your dry suit to achieve neutral buoyancy. As you ascend or feel yourself rising because of the expansion of air, you will need to vent small amounts of air from your BC or dry suit to maintain neutral buoyancy. For every descent you make, you must also make an ascent. Stop for a minute and secure any accessories you are carrying. Find your power inflator hose and your deflator oral inflator valve button and hold it up over your head. Give your buddy the up signal. Start swimming towards the surface. Remember to look up and around you as you are surfacing and breathe normally. Control your buoyancy and your ascent by venting air from your BC. Your rate of ascent must not exceed a speed of 9 meters or 30 feet per minute if you are using dive tables. This is only 15 centimeters or 6 inches per second and is much slower than you naturally want to proceed. Slow your ascent when you get to 9 meters or 30 feet. Stop at a depth of 4 meters or 15 feet for 3 minutes to do a precautionary decompression stop. Proceed to the surface, inflate your BC, switch from your regulator to snorkel if desired, and record the time you surfaced. There are some important safety skills you must master to be a responsible diver. Your goal is to never have to use these skills, but you must always be prepared in case you or your buddy have a problem. If your buddy runs out of air, you must know how to share air with your buddy. If you have a contingency supply, such as a pony bottle, that is the best method of sharing air with your buddy. If you don't have a contingency air supply, you must share your air with your buddy. This is called dependent ascents because your buddy is dependent on your air supply. The preferred method of sharing air is for your buddy to breathe from a separate regulator that you supply. This might be a secondary regulator attached to your air supply. This method of breathing is the octopus method. You must work out how you will share air in an emergency before you start your dive. Your buddy must know which regulator to use, where to find it, and how it's attached to your BC or your equipment. Your buddy will find that breathing from your extra regulator is just as easy as breathing from their own regulator. However, ascending will take some coordination. You and your buddy must ascend at the same speed by maintaining physical and eye contact. Hold on to them with one hand and position your buddy in front of you. Ask your buddy if they are okay and wait for a reply. Give your buddy the up signal and wait for their reply before starting your ascent. Once your buddy is breathing okay, you should carry out your normal ascent procedure. Remember, the normal ascent rate is 9 meters or 30 feet per minute. Even if you are using a redundant contingency scuba system, you should still perform the steps of ascending together. The other method of sharing air with your buddy is the buddy breathing method. If you do not have a secondary regulator or redundant contingency scuba system, you share air by passing your primary regulator back and forth. Take a deep breath of air and start exhaling when your buddy gives you the out of air sign. Grasp your buddy's right shoulder strap with your left hand. Hold your regulator by the hose and near the mouthpiece and remove it from your mouth. Turn the mouthpiece down so the regulator doesn't free flow. Keep exhaling a small stream of bubbles. Pass the regulator to your buddy by the hose and let them guide it into their mouth. Always give them access to the purge button so they can clear the second stage of water. Allow your buddy to take 2 breaths of air from the regulator and then pass the regulator back to you. Never let go of the hose. You must maintain contact and control of your air supply at all times. Repeat the exchange process while doing a slow, controlled ascent to the surface. During buddy breathing, you must remember to exhale small bubbles whenever the regulator is out of your mouth. You and your buddy must control your buoyancy, and you must maintain physical contact. Unless you practice buddy breathing on a regular basis, it is unrealistic to expect that you could perform it in an emergency. Divers who are not skilled in buddy breathing but attempt to do it anyway during an emergency risk serious injury. If you run out of air and you cannot obtain air from your buddy, you must make an independent ascent to the surface. You do emergency swimming ascent when you run out of air at shallower depths, about 18 meters or 60 feet. They can be done from greater depths, but contingency air supply is superior and recommended for deeper water diving. Look up to maintain an open airway and swim to the surface while exhaling a continuous stream of bubbles from your regulator. Always keep the regulator in your mouth during an emergency swimming ascent because as the water pressure decreases, you will get another small breath of air from your cylinder. You must remember to be ready to vent air from your BC to control your buoyancy during the ascent. You do a buoyant emergency ascent when you run out of air at greater depths. You drop your weight belt and gently exhale all the way to the surface. You must get yourself horizontal in the water and be facing up to create as much surface area as possible to slow your ascent as you approach the surface. It's easy to keep track of your buddy in controlled conditions where visibility is good and the area is limited. Maintaining contact with your buddy in open water is not as easy. The best ways to keep track of your buddy are: agree on a leader for each dive, discuss the dive before you get in the water, and agree on the location, purpose, activity, and general course you will follow underwater. Maintain your same position relative to one another for your entire dive. Establish your direction of travel underwater and follow that heading until you or your buddy suggest a change. Use the lost buddy procedure if you lose your buddy. Get yourself vertical in the water and look in all directions for your buddy or their bubbles. If you are in low visibility water, 3 meters or 10 feet or less, return to where you last saw your buddy and start your search there. Rise about 3 meters or 10 feet in the water and look again for your buddy or their bubbles. Ascend slowly to the surface after a minute if you do not see your buddy. Keep turning as you ascend and look for your buddy or their bubbles. Surface, note your position relative to 2 points on shore and wait for your buddy. When your buddy surfaces, get back together and continue your dive. If your buddy doesn't surface within 5 minutes and you're in an area where help is readily available, signal for help. It is your role in the emergency to contact and guide the help. There are standard signals you need to know to communicate underwater as well as on the surface. The Naui diving hand signals are standard in the United States diving community and are usually recognized in other countries as well. As a certified diver, you must be able to correctly identify and use each signal. Remember, for a signal to be effective, all concerned must discuss it and agree upon it before you start the dive. Proper use of signals is necessary for every dive. You probably realize that communication is not easy underwater. When you give a hand signal, you must display it distinctly, and you must wait for a response from your buddy. Your buddy acknowledges the signal by either repeating it or giving you the OK sign. You can write messages to your buddy on an underwater slate. This is a handy way to give detailed messages. You can also touch your buddy to gain his attention. However, avoid touching from behind so as not to startle them. Most charter boats have underwater recall devices that sound like a siren. If you hear the recall signal while you are underwater, you must surface and look to the boat for instructions. At the surface, you can use different types of audible and visual signals to communicate. You use some of the standard hand signals at the surface. If you wave to someone from the surface, it is a sign of distress, not a way to say hello. Dive boats have a blue and white flag that they fly when they want divers to return to the boat. When you see this flag, return immediately to the boat. A whistle is often used at the surface. A repeated series of 4 short blasts on a whistle is a standard distress signal. Removing your scuba unit in the water is as easy as removing a jacket. Unclip any buckles you have, pull your left arm out of the armhole, and use your right arm to pull the unit around to your right. To don the unit over your head, position your BC in front of you with the cylinder under the BC. The first stage of the regulator is toward you, and the second stage is in your mouth. Keep the hose from your second stage between your arms. Fasten your waistband and reclip any buckles at the front of your BC. When removing and replacing scuba, consider that if you are on the bottom, you'll want to be negative. Always breathe from your regulator when you are donning the unit. You must learn to refasten your waistband and buckles by feel. Before you refasten your waistband and clips, feel to make sure that your straps are not twisted and your hoses are not trapped. To discard the weight belt, undo the buckle and pull the tail of the weight belt free of the buckle and pull the belt completely away from your body. The weights will hang in a direct line towards the bottom. Release the weight belt. If you are handling it out of the water, make sure the person you are giving it to has a firm grip before you let go. To remove and replace your weight belt on the bottom, undo the buckle and pull the tail of the weight belt free of the buckle. Make any modifications to your weight belt. Hold the weight belt with the free end in your right hand, drop the buckle and rotate your body to the left. The weight belt will drape across your thighs. Reach down your left side with your left hand and feel for the buckle. Slide the weight belt up your back and position it under your cylinder and BC at your waist. Rebuckle the weight belt securely. To know where you are and to be able to get where you want to go and back is the objective of underwater navigation. Natural aids underwater will soon become as useful to you as street signs. Ripple marks in the sand on the bottom form parallel to the shore. As you get closer to shore, the ripple marks get closer together. You will see underwater landmarks such as rock formations, large and unique plants, crevices, and wrecks. When diving at night or with limited visibility, you must rely on a compass and your depth gauge. Using a compass allows you to navigate by dead reckoning. When you use a compass, you keep the lubber line aligned with the center line of your body. You can wear your compass on your wrist or mount it on your console with the rest of your diving instruments. The compass needle always points magnetic north. If you point the lubber line towards the shore, the compass needle points to one point. Rotate the index marks on the bezel to mark the position of the needle, so you'll know that when the needle is pointed between the two marks, you are swimming toward the shore. A reciprocal course is made when your outbound course is in a straight line and halfway through your dive, you make a 180-degree turn, which the compass enables you to do precisely. To make a 180-degree turn, you swivel around until your compass needle is directly opposite your original reference marker. Simple navigational techniques make diving more enjoyable. Knowing where you are will help you avoid long surface swims. You'll save time, air, and be able to spend more time enjoying the objective of your dive. After diving, you must disassemble your scuba gear and rinse it with fresh water. Turn off your air in a clockwise direction. Push and hold the purge button on one of your second stages or power inflator to relieve the air pressure in the hoses of your regulator. Unscrew the yoke screw from the cylinder valve. Dry the dust cap attached to the first stage of your regulator. Replace the dust cap over the inlet to the first stage of your regulator and tighten the yoke screw until it's finger tight. Remove your BC from the cylinder. Turn the BC upside down so that the power inflator hose attachment point is at the lowest point. This will allow any water in the BC to drain down into the hose. Press the deflator oral inflator valve button to allow the water to drain out of the power inflator hose. Rinse your equipment with fresh water and allow it to dry completely before storing it. Chapter 4: Diving Science. The underwater world presents a new and totally different environment from the air world in which you live. As you descend below the surface, the increased pressure will have direct and indirect effect on your body. However, most of your time underwater you will not be aware of or feel these effects. If you pick up one scuba cylinder with air in it at 1 bar or 1 atmosphere and another just like it filled with air to its rated pressure, the second is about 2 to 4 kilograms or 4 to 8 pounds heavier than the first. This is because the compressed air is more dense. Air has weight. 1 liter of air weighs 1.25 grams.